Welcome back. All right, so I want to do another addition to the playlist of truly awful seasons. I want to talk about the New York Islanders in the year this happened. There's a lot to unpack in that season, right? So 95, 96, the New York Islanders are looking for a new direction. They're looking for a new look. And so they opted for the Fisherman, which was so popular that within a year they said, okay, we're going to just go ahead and mind wipe everybody, pretend that didn't happen, and go back to what we had before. Now, what's interesting is, of course, all these years later now, people are like, hey, the Fisherman, right? They should totally do a Fisherman throwback. And all indications are that they're going to. That this year's reverse retro from the Islanders will be a Fisherman throwback. But I think it's easy to understand why the Islanders as an organization would not be anxious to bring back that logo, considering the 22, 50, and 10 season they had in 95, 96. And the season was a complete mess. Now, the blame was being thrown at GM Don Maloney. He, before the season gets going, fires Lorne Henning behind the bench, and Milbury takes over as coach. Mike Milbury. Now, Milbury, remember him as a GM and having a, well, interesting record as a GM, but the reality is, as a coach, Milbury was good. Milbury was a good coach. And I thought he did as well as one could with that Islanders roster. It was not a good roster. Their first 10 games, 2-6-2. So 2 wins in their first 10. They're getting themselves out of the playoff race early. Their second 10, they weren't any better. They were 2-7-1. Their next 10 games, they were 3-7. And then as they hit the 40-game mark, that 10-game span, they went 3-2-5. So they tied 5 of those 10 games. But you're so far out of the playoffs, you need more than ties. They allowed 6 or more goals 16 times that season in an era where defense was becoming the name of the game. So for the New York Islanders, they were really in trouble here, allowing way too many goals for the era that we're coming into. On October of 1996, so this is after this year, but I want to throw it into this video as well because we're going to do a video on this soon. John Spano, guy comes in. I'm going to buy the company for this, or the team. I mean, it's a company of sorts. The team for this amount. I promise I have a lot of money. I really do. He didn't. He did not have the money to make this work. They'd be like, okay, we need $1.7 million for this transaction, and he'd send them $1,700. And then he'd say, oh, whoops, that was a snafu. I'll fix it. Don't worry, I'll fix it. And they closed the deal to sell it to John Spano before the NHL realized this is a bad idea. So again, this is the dire straits that the Islanders organization was in. The coming off of that really awful season, they then sold to somebody who had probably about the same amount of money that you or I have right now. Just sure, yeah, I'll give you $50 million. Cool, I have a team. Awesome. Right, now I have to give them $50 million. I knew there was a snag in my plan. Now, we had quite the run of GMs too, and really taking over for Bill Torrey, who had built that dynasty in the early 80s. Right, taking over for Bill Torrey is not going to be easy. And so for Don Maloney, he didn't last that long, from August of 92 until December of 95. Darcy Regier is named the interim replacement. He's there for 10 days. And then Mike Milbury takes over. Milbury would be the general manager of the New York Islanders from December of 1995 till June of 2006. A glorious, glorious era in the New York Islanders' history. Then Neil Smith took over for 10 days. He was in the organization for a grand total of 41. At 10 days, he said, to heck with this. I don't like this setup. Neil Smith, who of course had been the general manager of the New York Rangers when they won the Stanley Cup in 94. There was a lot of hype too, like, hey, look, we got Neil Smith. This is going to turn around. And then they gave the job to Garth Snow in June of 2006, who had just retired. It was so weird. It was like, okay, I'm retiring as your goaltender. And Charles Wong said, and your new general manager is Garth Snow. And so Charles Wong, it was one of those odd things that he did. Charles Wong, of course, passed away not that long ago now. An interesting owner, to say the least, and at some point there should be a video on him as well, because his ownership of New York had its growing pains. I thought he became quite a good owner later on, but early on, you could see he was getting himself familiar, and there were some interesting decisions being made. Garth Snow would be general manager from June of 2006 till June of 2018. The Islanders are nothing if not patient with general managers that fans want to see fired and buy billboards to get them fired. So this is the kind of tumultuous offseason that we're seeing, which is not helping the on ice product, or off ice product, not helping the on ice product here at all, right? And I mean, some of it's off season, right? So with Milbury behind the bench and then becoming GM partway through the season, which Spano told him, hey, Bonus should be in that job, you need to go. And he listened. He became the general manager only. I don't think we'll ever see a general manager and coach joint job being done. I don't think we'll ever see that again, where one man is both. I think that with how complicated everything is in the NHL now, I don't think one man has the amount of time to do both jobs. So 229 goals for them that season. That was 26th or 22nd out of 26 teams. Their goals against 315. That's 25 or 25th out of 26 teams in the NHL. So that's not a recipe for success. The New York Islanders, there was no recipe for success, only disaster, and spectacular disaster at that. Because remember, they're also wearing this. So you've got a team that's in complete chaos. They don't have solid ownership. They don't have solid leadership at the top. Nobody knows what's going on here. And then the guys have to wear this when they go out on the ice. Not your nice old Islanders logo and, hey, that's the style they wore. And that was the style they wore when they wore those cups. No, fish sticks. They get to be fish sticks. So Ziggy Palffy is the guy who is carrying the mantle for the Islanders at this point. 81 games, 43 goals, 44 assists, 87 points. Palffy's a warrior. Really is. To be a part of the New York Islanders during this time, and he would move on to the LA Kings, where I'm glad he was relieved. They'd never have to wear this again. But yeah, Palffy was easily their best player. Travis Green, 69 games, 25 goals, 45 assists, 70 points. Green was very good for them that year as well. Matthew Schneider, 65 games, 11 goals, 36 assists, 47 points. I may be doing a Matthew Schneider video soon. It was a career I was looking at the other day. Marty McInnes, 74 games, 12 goals, 34 assists, 46 points. And Wendell Clark, who had a good start and then gets traded because the team didn't have a good start. 58 games, 24 goals, 19 assists, 43 points. And he gets traded to Toronto, which I would imagine made him quite happy at the time because he wasn't going to have to wear this anymore. Bertuzzi, having to wear these. 76 games, 18 goals, 21 assists, 39 points. Alexander Semak, 69 games, 20 goals, 14 assists, 34 points. Derek King, 61 games, 12 goals, 20 assists, 32 points. Nicholas Anderson played in 47 games, 14 goals, 12 assists, 26 points. Brian McCabe, who would be going with Bertuzzi to the Vancouver Canucks. And Linden would be wearing this at some point. 82 games for McCabe that year, 7 goals, 16 assists, 23 points. And then a couple of notables. First, Kirk Muller, 15 games, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. He ends up getting traded to Toronto. They kind of made a big deal of Kirk Muller going there, and they kind of felt like, hey, this is, he's got a cup ring from Montreal, and he's a good veteran player. Did not last that long. He goes to Toronto, as Islander players are wont to do. Brett Lindros played 18 games that year, had 1 goal, 2 assists. That would be the final season in his very short NHL career. The brother of Eric Lindros. He was a top 10 draft pick. There was every reason to believe that while he would never reach the kind of numbers that Eric Lindros did, you might be able to get a good power forward with him. A guy who could drop the gloves, maybe get you 25 goals. It was not to be. His career ends due to concussions. So not only was Eric Lindros's career shortened due to concussions, but his brother's career was ended due to them as well. Then in net, it's a bit of a misadventure. Tommy Soderstrom, 11, 23, and 6 with an 878 save percentage. There's not really any way to dress that up. Eric Fischel, 7, 12, and 2 with an 897 save percentage. And Jamie McLennan. So McLennan might have one of these in his closet. 3, 9, and 1 with an 886 save percentage for him. And then Tommy Salo, 1, 7, and 1 with an 860 save percentage. So 4 goaltenders there. All of them would be NHL regulars at various points in their career. But there wasn't somebody there for the Islanders that they could really, rely on game in, game out. And Soderstrom's numbers were bad. Their defense was bad. Everything with the Islanders at this point was not good. And the worst thing for this is that as bad as 95-96 is, and it's one of the worst seasons, it's not the worst season the team had. So 93-94, before all of the disaster, they were a 500 team. They lost in the first round against the New York Rangers. Now, they got annihilated. That first round between the Islanders and the Rangers might have been the most lopsided series, at least of that decade. I mean, honestly, it was just a slaughter. I still remember the "We Want Hextall" chants. It was a slaughter. Ranger fans are having a good time with that one. 94-95, their points percentage was .365, so they just nosedive. And this is where the fans start blaming Don Maloney. Thankfully, they bring in this jersey and this logo, so the fans have something else to look at. 95-96, the season we're looking at, they had a .329 points percentage. It did go up the following season to .427. That's still not very good. Went up the following season to .433. Still not where you'd want it to be. And then it drops. In 98-99, it drops. So this is under the watch of Mike Milbury, .354. They would also have a .354 points percentage the year after, and this is where you get into all the trades and everything else. I've done videos on Milbury's time as a general manager. It's fascinating, unless you're an Islander fan, right? 2000-2001, they actually had a points percentage of .317. So this is where when people talk about rebuilds and, oh, well, you know, if you do a rebuild, and rebuilds can be tough because it can turn into an era of just complete disaster. 2001-2002, they actually did get back into the playoffs. They had a .585 points percentage that year. They lost in the first round against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that is under the watch of Mike Milbury. They did get better, and they did get back into the playoffs. So it felt like at the time maybe the patience was paying off. Maybe despite their best efforts, they were a playoff team. But it was a long time between this season and the darkness that this represented before you get back into the Islanders being a good team. The Islanders also during this era were dealing with a lot of conversation about Nassau Coliseum and whether or not they needed to be moved. I'm not talking about just like, you know, Brooklyn where they ended up and now they've got their new building and everything's fine. There was discussions of whether or not the Islanders, and the ownership problem wasn't making things better, do they need to move the team? And so this was absolutely a conversation. There were fans in the stands wearing Quebec jerseys and, you know, with signs saying move the team to Quebec, which I'm sure Islander fans in the area really appreciated that kind of sentiment. Thankfully, we never hear that anymore from any fans about any fan base. But the Islanders somehow survived this era. I was pretty sure as we got into the late 90s that this team was done. They weren't showing any upward momentum. Everything they did was a disaster, except going back to their old logo and saying, basically, you won't see, don't worry about the fisherman, it's gone. It was a year. It was 1 year this was on the front of the jersey. And then it became a third. And then it was, they put the regular logo on the front of this. I have those jerseys too. It's fascinating because the Islanders have a pretty monochromatic history. Mostly, I mean, I know it's a different color blue that they use than what they used to. But this was just that wild and crazy teenage phase, I guess, for the organization when they tried some stuff. And immediately people said, maybe stop trying some stuff. Get back to that, I don't know, building a winner. And it took a while. It took a while. This was a season that there was some damage done. And then again, as I said, during that season, Milbury becomes GM, and things really take off from there. And not necessarily in a way Islander fans enjoyed, but there was never a boring moment when it came to the New York Islanders at this time in their history. All right, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.